About 17 and a half years ago, on December 22nd, 2000, a Federal Express cargo plane with 4 people aboard crashed in a remote region of the Pacific Ocean. There was only 1 survivor. Fortunately, it was not a real crash of a real airplane, but it was the release of the movie Castaway. The sole survivor, Chuck Nolan, played by Tom Hanks, soon realized he was facing a serious situation. He needed fresh water and a reliable food source. Now, being able to make fire certainly helped with the food situation. But very soon, another need was growing to the crisis level. Chuck Nolan did the best he could with what he had to work with to satisfy that need. Yes, Chuck Nolan created his new best friend, Wilson. Companionship, connection is a vital need for all of us. That's how we're wired. That's how we were created. It is important. How many times have we seen in the news reports of someone accused of a terrible crime who was often described by family, friends, and co-workers as being a loner? We see it all the time. In the 1940s, a week was set aside for National Mental Health Awareness Week. And in the 1960s, it was extended to National Mental Health Awareness Month. That is May, this month. I wonder how often we catch a glimpse of a situation and just shrug it off, thinking it might not be bad. I wonder, is that what the police, social services, and FBI in Florida thought? It might not be bad. Right. It might not. It could be worse. As a society, we need to be less socially polite and more aware and helpful. Our castaway, Chuck Nolan, didn't have any professionals on the island to turn to, so he did the next best thing. He created Wilson. And guess what? As Chuck's hair and beard grew, so did Wilson's. Connection begins very early in our lives. First with our immediate family. It soon extends to close friends in the neighborhood with whom we play. It then extends to our school. So, very early in life, we realize that we are part of a family, that we are part of a neighborhood, that we are part of a school. Often there's a crest, a logo, a symbol, maybe a song, and or a mascot representing the sense of belonging. My school mascots have been the Gators, the Hornets, and the Bears. And of course around here, everybody is familiar with the Bulldogs. I wonder, what are some of the other mascots represented here?
Tigers.
The tigers?
Bearcats.
Bearcats? There's a bear back there, right? I'm sorry?
Jayhawks.
Jayhawks? There's that connection. There's that connection. And when you run into someone, like just recently, that also went to SMS, and you realize that there's that connection. Oh, yes. And then the conversation goes, you remember when this, or remember when that, or talk about the school or the neighborhood. Connection is an important part of our humanity. It's a way of knowing that we have these things in common and belonging to something that is shared. Gangs know it. Gangs exploit that. We constantly see it in society. I've seen it in prison ministry. The groups that we connect to and relationships we have can be bad and destructive, like gangs, or they can be good and helpful. Obviously, like God, church, Bible study groups. Today's gospel passage talks about one of the good kinds. Continuing our theme here in this Easter season of looking at the disciples while they were waiting in Jerusalem after Easter, before Pentecost. We continue to imagine the disciples remembering the things that Jesus told them that Thursday night, that special Thursday night as recorded in John. And today we go in John, we look at the 15th chapter, beginning with the first verse. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes, so it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. The word of the Lord. The first two main points of this passage is that Jesus is the true vine. Knowing that there are many vines out there we can attach ourselves to, good vines, bad vines, Jesus reminds us that He is the true vine. Now we might also say that He's the original vine, but I think true vine is the best description because in Him there's truth and only truth. He certainly was the vine that was lifted up on a cross that Friday. And the same vine resurrected the following Sunday. So, if we ask, where was Adam and Eve when they first met God? And then ask, what does a vine do? Okay, well, Adam and Eve first met God in the garden, of course. And in today's reading, Jesus reminds us that God is the gardener. God owns the garden. He takes care of the garden. When Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they had to leave the garden. So what did God do then? He used the vine to reach out beyond the garden to connect with us again. And it wasn't just a vine, it was the true vine. There may be shinier vines out there. There may be glitzier vines out there. There may be vines that come with snazzy songs. There may be vines that are really popular these days. There may be vines that promise power. There may be vines that promise success. There may be vines that make you feel oh so good temporarily. But there's only one true eternal vine. And that vine wants to be connected to us and grow in relationship with every one of us. And that's where the miracle is. That leads us to the second main point. The connection. The relationship. The belonging. In this passage, Jesus pleads with His disciples and us to remain in Him as He remains in us. And in this context, remain means living or abiding. Several of the English translations in the Bible in this passage use the word abide in here instead of remain. We just sang a song a minute ago about what this passage is talking about. Abide in me. This is a relationship Jesus is talking about. Last week we looked at a passage later in this same 15th chapter of John where Jesus calls the disciples and us friends. Like any relationship, this one requires effort on our part to help it grow. Obvious ways to stay connected to the true vine and grow are attending worship, hearing the Word, the central part of worship. Also, songs and hymns, prayers, pastor's message, Bible study, Holy Communion, and being in community with other Christians. Outside of these walls, outside of worship, for the other 6 days a week, we can read and study daily devotionals like the Upper Room. There are many email and text scriptures for the day that people receive. And then we can get plugged into weekly or bi-weekly small groups like Walk to Emmaus and Via de Cristo. Many of these small groups meet outside the church building walls. They meet in coffee houses, cafes, restaurants, people's homes, in a park. And that's particularly healthy because it physically brings prayer and study in a small group setting away from the church building. It physically brings that activity into one's life in the real world. When we stay connected to the true vine and abide in Him and He in us, we can bear fruit. That's what Jesus was talking about. Bearing fruit. Bearing fruit feels good, doesn't it? Just recently, to everyone who participated in the Odessa Cares event, many of us were over there for hours, right? Didn't it feel good knowing that we were helping a lot of people in need? Yeah. Amen. Let's pray. Loving Lord, thank you for wanting to have a relationship with us and for teaching ways we can grow in that relationship so that we can bear fruit to the glory of God. And all God's people said, Amen.